Hi everyone, welcome back into the JansenArt studio. We're going to continue some of our studies. So we did a floral last and a seascape, and I think it's time to go back to another Western here. And I want to do a Western landscape. So this one is kind of a neat idea. I build these in Photoshop. So I built this one here in Photoshop all yesterday, and it is a combination of about 8 different photos. I am going to, those of you that are members of the channel, I'm going to make a special video presentation called Behind the Painting, which is going to talk about how I go about designing everything from florals to westerns and stuff like that. And we'll start doing that with some of the different paintings and stuff that we have. But what I wanted to do was to create this journey back in through here, create some water effects down here. So I went looking for all different kinds of photos. I've had this cowboy and rider that I got from Adobe stock. I get almost everything I do from Adobe stock, and I've always wanted to use them, and so I going to kind of use them. Now, some of this stuff is a little bit off, but I'll be correcting that during the painting here, and we'll kind of get going. We're going to follow along with some of the Western techniques I've used before with a little bit of a change on some things. Now, the colors, these are my standard colors. I do have out the medium beige, which is one of my favorite colors, especially when I do Westerns. It's just a neutral. It is white, yellow, and a little umber, and it's just a nice colored neutral to a complete neutral to have out when I'm doing this, and I use it in cows and in grasses and stuff like that whenever I need that neutral. Okay, all right, so let's get going here. So I've sketched out this. This is actually part of the mountain range and stuff up here is called the Acrylic trails, or we call it the Wonderland Trail. And so I had all different kinds of photos of it, but I chose this one because it creates this nice little journey up through here. So I wanted to do that. I'm going to start, and we'll come right back up here. I printed this off. Those of you that are in course members of the channel, I'll have it up on the in the community page for you. It's going to be up there quite like that sky, and so it's up there about a value 9. And I love the cool and the warm. I love how Carl Rungus, that the wildlife painter, did that all the time, cool and warm. And I just love that kind of effects in a painting. So I wanted to add it here. Now, before I use up all my white, because we've got quite a few things to do today, I'm just going to mix out some white, and it just takes a little bit of this phthalo to make a value 9. Just a little bit of it. So I have some phthalo, some red violet, or you could use the Quinacridone Violet here. I'm up around the 9, which usually dries a little darker. So you can see I'm up around the 9. Usually dries a little darker. So I'm going to model in actually some lighter colors there, but I'm going to start there, and I'm going to basically paint those back mountains wet in the wet. So I'm going to use a large brush and some extender. So I have extender medium out here. I have the open medium, which you've seen me use before several times. And so I have that for thicker areas up to the front, but I'm going to mix in, just brush mix in some extender, and I'm going to keep this a little bit heavier than you've seen me do before. So I'll work a lot of paint into this, but I don't want to lose my drawing. And those of you that are in the members, I will put this drawing up for you on the community page that you'll be able to download. Before, got a little bit of a mark right up there on that, and I'm going to have to take that off. But those of you that are on, I in the last couple of videos, I did a really nice little PDF for you to print off the drawing, so you could have that, and some of you really liked it, so I think I'll be doing that as well. Now, that's overall very even. I put a little bit of blue into this when I was using Photoshop, so I'm going to model in. I love atmosphere. Now, in the very back, we would actually leave it lighter. that atmosphere will come a little heavier as it comes forward into the painting here. So, and I just got that a little too heavy up into the front. So I'll just wipe that off a bit there. I love atmosphere. Let's work a little bit of our whites back here because we want that real light that's, you know, the atmosphere here is real light and diminishing down, and that's kind of what I want to do. Now, I'm going to take off just a little bit of that here so I can control that color a little easier here. There we go, just like that. And I can barely see, you know, my drawing through here, which is more than enough. But if you want, you can wipe it down just a bit. But leave a little bit back here. That's going to help us with our atmospherics. Now, I'm going to just set that brush aside. Sometimes I'll poke it in a little extender to keep it from drying out. To set that off to the side. We'll wipe down just a bit of this. And we're going to start... I'm going to start painting this. I want a lot of interest into those mountains. They're all very different, so I'm going to have quite a bit of interest. I want a lot of interest, really, in all over this painting. So I am going to work these colors quite a bit. And I'm going to start back here with some medium beige and some whites. And I'm going to start just with the medium beige, maybe a touch of yellow into it, right in with some of these blues right here. And you can see right over here when I hold that up there, that's basically that color that's there. Maybe a tiny bit of the violet. Now, as mountains and stuff recede in the atmosphere, they get more violet and stuff in tone. So having that right up in here, we're just going to work. This is a 3/4 inch fusion flat. And I'm just going to work some of these tones down through here. We'll have some more shadow tones and everything, but I love this, really, this valley that's formed here. And I want to leave a few streaks. When I'm doing the mountain here, I'm going to stroke or move my brush in the direction of the slopes and stuff of the mountains. So, and we know this is going to dry a little darker, so that's okay. Now, sometimes I will take my knife, if that looks a little too smooth, and let's just grab some burnt sienna, some of this other color, once I get that on, and I'll just break that up with some of that slope and that movement, with just a little bit of movement like that. Maybe soften it out a bit here. That just adds more color interest, kind of the stuff that you see back down in there, and I like that kind of stuff. Let's go a touch darker. Now, as I go darker, I really like the blues, violets, burnt siennas, and I love these kinds of tones, but we want it slightly heavier into the blues, maybe a little violet, and some extender to keep it kind of loose here. And I'll start in some vertical escarpments here, and that's just a little bit dark. So I'm looking right up and through here, a little bit dark, and I'll just come through with some lights here. And I like to do small pushes and marks here as I start to lighten this up here so that I get this vertical interest, but it's not all equally the same. Does that make sense? So I get a little bit of some of that stuff going on back there, but it's a little more blue and violet, and we can emulate that really easy. This is where I work back and forth with my knife, small brushes, and light colors here. I love, see, these just make beautiful mountains, and we'll just work some color right in there. Some of that blues stuff there, maybe a little bit pushing up from the bottom here. That emulates some of that movement. Sometimes I do it with a smaller brush. Here I'm just gonna push this up, get a little bit of that movement here. Here we go, just like that. And that might dry too dark, but that's okay. We'll go back put it back in there, okay? Let's come back up with some of this blue, some of this real light here, and let's put in some of those areas here. And track your brush, kind of find the angles that it moves here, and tap into some of this other color. And I didn't add a tremendous amount of extender, so it'll start drying up, and that's okay. I don't mind everything drying up on me here, and I like to go back and forth too between the two. I don't mind things drying up and mixing again. I love to mix. I'm a color mixer, and so I love to, use and make color. So never bothers me to mix again. And I feel that just doing that just adds more interest to everything I like to paint. So it doesn't bother me. So I'm going to come over here. Let's add that little bit right over here. And see, I love that. See, by pushing in, it's not real mixed up. And I can touch it and lighten it up, but I'll get some different color tones in there that just look wonderful. Now, it's a touch too dark. And so I'm going to grab out one of my smaller brushes and get back up to some of my light violets here, and just use that to pull through. I want to leave some of that color movement in there. Does that make sense? I want to leave some of that modeling. Some of you that watch some of the landscapes I do, you'll see that's something I want to do. See, I'm looking at that little point there. So I want to get that a little lighter in there, which is going to cause it to completely recede, which is what we want. I want a little more, a little lightness and a little more receding back there. Now, the snow, the snow here, okay, so first we have to identify lights coming in this way. So these are all lit up. Shadows are falling to the right, light is coming to the left, and snow can be, as it gets back there, it's just going to be a light color with the atmosphere, slightly lighter than the atmosphere. And technically this might have a sloping side to it, but you can see your values are going to be really light, guys, and that does make it a little dangerous in that you can make this whole thing really too light, so we want to be a little careful. But I want to just work this and touch some of this in so I get some highs and lows to those mountains back there. I know it looks pretty much the same back there, but I want to add a little more interest into it. So I want some of this to slope down through. I want to capture some of that, alla prima feeling of just doing it once and getting it done. But I also want to be able to add some extra interest and stuff like that into those back mountains back there. So I can see after I get that light on that I have to adjust this one a little bit here. And so I just pull through it a bit, see? And even after that starts to tack up, that's when you get the best. If you let it tack up a bit, that's when it gets the prettiest. So see how we're going to add all of that beautiful little interest back there, and little spots and other little things going on. Kind of grayish color here, violet and gray, no texture. Try to, if you get texture like I just did there, I try to tap that off so it goes away. We'll grab a little more light right here because this little spot is pretty light here. There we go. Push that back there. And I've got a bit of texture there, so I'll just tap that off. And a little more light here, right up on this point here. Some highs and lows. You could even, on the normally on the mountains when I'm teaching with you, so if light's coming in this way, on the sloping left would get light, sloping right would get shadow. And so I could even push that into a little bit of a shadow there and push some of this, tap that back in. But I plan on, those of you that paint the Western landscapes with me, a lot of times I'm pretty quick with my landscapes. I put them on pretty quick, but This one I really love. So, and I'm actually practicing for another bigger landscape that I'm going to be doing in my online class that I call Through the Wind River. And I have it all drawn there. And it's 3 foot high. Just to let you know, it goes up through this mountain valley called Through the Wind River is what I call it. The Wind River is a few hours away from here up in Wyoming. And I love going up there. And there's just beautiful, beautiful mountainscapes up there. And so I want to paint a real pretty one. That's right up there like that. So I'm going to set that one a little further back. A real soft little gray here into these back colors. Tapped back in there. Here like that. Set that one back there. It's actually a little more pointed, but I find that that point is a little bit distracting. I'll go up a little bit, but that point is a little distracting, I think. But so we have some small movements, like light movements here coming off of this one. And just small brush movements. And that's where a lot of your interest is going to come here. So, yeah, we'll drop that in. We'll drop, one of the things I do like to do, like when I do the snow like this, we'll model this up a bit. So I like to just, because I get the snow, when I use the knife, I get this granulated edge. And I love the little granulated edge. Now, it can be too much, so you just touch it through with your brush to soften out any of those other little touches. But I like to do this with the knife, just like that. See, I love that. It gets more of that interest that one is working with. So you can, like here, I'll take just a bit of that warmer here, slightly different. Let's just work this in. So the knife works really, really well, but you got to be careful that you don't get too much interest into it, okay? So we'll grab some of that. So when I work with that, I'm going to add the snow last. So here comes the kind of the first low light, and then we'll put in a little bit more of a highlight here. Not the snow, just a little more light, warmer kind of cut in there. A little warmer here. Just like that. Let me grab some slightly darker. Now this is starting to dry up, so it's been 15 minutes or so since I mixed this, so this is starting to dry up a bit. So I'll just grab a little more here. Work some of this in there. I just love that. It's just I love that positive painting like that. Working those edges and stuff. And especially with that knife, I'm going to take this and as we come up here, I'm going to work up that knife there just a bit. See, you get that granulated edge. That's really interesting. And it is kind of dangerous. I've done this a lot, so I'm not too worried about it. But it is kind of dangerous putting this much interest back in here without knowing where you're going to go right now. But this guy up here is going to be so dark, you can look at how dark he is and see that I'm going to do that. So if I keep my values working pretty constant there, I'll be okay. In other words, keep my values, everything really light in the upper portions of the value scale. I'll be okay here. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. And this in there. That works pretty nice. I like that. And I can use the tip of the knife with some of that right in there. So we have some of this light just kind of dribbling down here into these little crevasses and stuff of the mountain there. And that just looks excellent like that. I'm working it right into that wet edge there. And let's go a little light and a little bit of blue. But I'm, a value 9 at least here. So and we'll push that in. A little bit more of that edge right here. So you want that bit of an edge so that this edge of that ridge line there, has a little more dark on it, will come in front. So I'm watching edges, very much so watching edges. Here, a little bit of this, and tiny touch more blue and violet here. Make that a little more violet. Here, but thin that out, looking for that color. I'm just going to use a little bit of it here, because see that dark what I'm looking at right there is really quite a bit lighter than here, and they're right about the same values. So I'm watching these values, so I want to put a little more dark right here up onto this and into this streaky area here. The dark, of course, comes forward here. So that creates that. Now, it might be too dark, but it's something that I can lighten up. I just kind of get it close to the ballpark. Does that make sense? We're early into the painting, and so these are stuff that I can change pretty quick, pretty easily. So we'll add a little bit of this. And I started that out a little darker, and then I turned around and lightened it up, and now I'm going back a little bit darker. But it's a back and forth, and that's okay. Go back and forth. And we do that. It's something I always talk a lot about you with the color theory students. It's called simultaneous contrast. As you apply one color in, the others, will, this has a little ridge line right there. The colors will appear to change in some of the other things. So it's called simultaneous contrast. We'll just push a little bit of that in there. That looks pretty good. A little edge of it right in here, just to create that little bit. I like that. And it could have a bit of snow, so let's just set that up for a second. Grab some of this white right here, and could have a little bit of snow here, right up here like that. See, I love those fractured edges. That's what gives you a little more realism to it. And I put, for the mountain there, it has a little less than that. So I'm just gonna add just a touch more right here, and then I'll come back and I can push some of that out. Get some of my beiges and stuff right here and push some of that back out just like that. Oh, I like that stroke. See, I love that movement stroke. And sometimes I just paint too much, and I scold myself for doing it, for painting too much, but we get in there and we just start working it more than what it should. Back and forth, and so. But you look at this, okay, we're just a few minutes into the painting, and look at the interest that we're getting back there. So, and you don't normally see me go this much interest into a painting like this soon, so, but this is just another way to approach it, that I do like to approach it. But the other thing is, I've looked at this painting now for a couple of days as I designed it and stuff, and I kind of, by looking at it that much, I kind of know exactly where it is I want to go. And, sometimes, those of you that watch the videos and stuff, sometimes if you just jump right into it too quickly without watching the video a couple times, you can get lost. And I like to, when I watch other artists, I like to watch it several times so that I know ahead of time where that artist is going with that particular color passage. And I can put it in there without getting too much trouble and getting myself into too much trouble. Let's put a few little ridge lines here, so you would think shadow coming off of this other side here. A few little ridge lines there. There, like that. Just a little bit of shadow there. That looks pretty good. That's just nice and soft back through there. Just love that. Now, let's look up here at that darkness that's there. See, it's down right around a 5, and that's pretty close to what I have right here. Maybe a little more blue, a little more burnt sienna right in here. Just a touch more blue and violet, I think. Here. A little burnt sienna. Right about a value 5 or so. Let's put this this edge in right there. Now that looks really, really dark, but it's very close to what is over there, but it's probably a little too dark. So at least right now. So I'm going to lighten it up, a little white and a little medium beige. And let's do that again, a little bit lighter. Here we go. Here, we'll leave some of that ridge line right in there. Just balance that out. That's closer to it. It's a little more bluish over there, but for right now, that's pretty good. And we'll come in and drop this little ridge line in here. See, we'll leave a few of those little streaks and stuff because that's where that interest goes. But you can see there's some lights and dark interest in there, and we can work some of that in right now. Some of it we'll add later because we're not anywhere near done on these mountains. But it's kind of fun to paint them like this, working through. Let's push a bit of this shadowy right here, right in there. That's pretty neat. I love that light. A little bit warmer. Just, I don't know where that warmth kind of comes from. A little bit of our blue and violet over here as well. But a little bit of that light. Let's just bring that line down right in there. Brush that off a bit. There we go. And I much prefer that kind of mark with the knife because I get those edges, that granulation. So you just touch, you can see how heavy I'm using that paint, that color right in there. And right up along that ridge line, a little more light. And if you ever need to make a light, how do you make a light? I love to ask these in my color classes. How do you make a light look lighter without adding white? You make the color sitting next to it darker, simultaneous contrast. And so if I needed to lighten those up, I could darken the darks through there, but I do kind of like that. I want, as that dried down over here, got just a little bit darker than I wanted. Wanted a little more snow right over there. So I'm going to push that right in there. But that works so well like that. So much fun like that. Let's get up this snow cap up here. Some of this warm light. This light right up here. There. And get a few little beads of texture that I want to take off because I don't want that texture in there. But I do like that second little mark. And that being a little blurry, I like that. Let's work some of this in here as this is coming down. We'll get a little bit lighter, warmer. Model these colors up. A little lighter, warmer, a little. Push some of those in there with the knife or with your brush. Now this is a number 10 filbert, and flat, and it was working really nice. Get a little violet in here. Here, some of that violet tone. See where you get that, especially as I start to come forward here, I'm going to want some of these different tones coming forward. And if you have a good map like that, if you just follow that map, we're going to get a little lighter back here. Just, keep your values right in line of what's happening on that map. You're going to paint a beautiful painting. Let's grab a little extender, thin this just a bit. I thin it so that it flows better. And sometimes I like it, especially if I'm allowing some of the interest. I want some of that blue that I originally washed down there to come through so I get some more light and shadow interest in there. And that works pretty good. Let's grab a little more light here. We'll drop that light right in there of that slope coming out there. like that. So you see it's coming forward here. Now we've got a little bit of the light marks right up through here, a little bit right in there, here we go, so I'm looking at those little guys right over there, and yeah, we'll work a bit of this light coming down this ridge line here. It's kind of in sun a bit here, like that. Some of that dark angled through a shadow mark right in there. Here. So I kind of find the contours here of the mountains, that I'll accentuate them a bit here. There. And a little bit darker. Just add a bit of extender to it, and it'll move that color again. So that looks pretty good. And little, there's a lot of, right here, just little marks of rock outcroppings and stuff like that that we have to put in. And those are really kind of important because they break up some of the solidness of the light snow. So, and we just want to emulate it, but I like to get pretty close to what I'm doing there. And I like that, I spent a lot of time on this photo getting the, working the different elements to what I like. So I want to get it a little close to it. Here we go. Let's push a little light right here. There we go. See, we can come back after we get our horses and stuff like that and paint even more through there, but we want to keep that kind of soft and a little blurry. And if you get something there that is a little too much texture, you can always blur it out slightly. And if it's dry, just add a tiny bit of water to your brush and it'll blur it out. So, but I like some of those colors in there. Now, this is a little bluer, and so that's a little warm, so I've got to get some of that blue back in there, the violets back in there. Let's get those violets back in here. Here. And some extender, some blue. And I like to gray that off with some of my burnt sienna. And so we'll gray that off. And you can do it more as a real thin glaze, or we could add a tiny bit of light to it here. And let's just glaze over that. See how it gets a little more blue. Not super dark, so a little bit of light into that here. And we can get some darker areas here. Here. That's kind of neat. A little bit of that streaking through this one a bit. And again, we can change some of that, but that's kind of nice there. And build it back again. So it's just a slow amount of basically having a bunch of fun painting snow and rocks here. Here we go. Yeah, just a little bit of it there. Doesn't go around the corner that much, but it does on mine now. So I try to come close, but I don't worry about being perfect. But I do want it to be recognized about what we're painting here. Here we go. Get that little bit of lighter right up in there. And the shadow. So what we have here really is a light and a shadow. So this is a shadow little edge coming back here. And we'll just grab a bit of that. I don't know. You know, I was joking when I was posted in there with some of the members that you got my dogs in there just snoring away in the back. And now the phone's going off over there. But my dogs are just snoring away over there. Yeah, they love that. Lots going on here at the studio. And yeah, this it used to be. I've been making DVDs. I made my first video DVD. Used to do VHS, but I did my first DVD back in 2002. Video, filming it into the studio. And I always, everything had to be perfect. No noise, you know. Now this is life. This is life in my studio. There's a lot going on, so, you know, I don't worry about any of that anymore. It's just my studio and studio life, and hopefully you guys understand. Let's just break that a bit right in there. Yeah. And some rocks. And I'm putting a lot more into this than I normally do, but I kind of like it. So normally I do stuff like this, just real quick emulation here. And I use the brush, you know, like the flat brush and the knife, very flat, because that creates, see how it creates more rough granulation? That's what I'm looking for. Don't use the tip of the brush, that blends too much. Use the flat of the brush right here. You can almost feel that ferrule hitting the edge, and that's what you want. A little bit of this right up there. That's pretty neat. Some of that light. It's going to come right here across there, and then this slope comes down here. Some of this in there. There, like that. So you can see it. This area there is that area there. And let's go grab a little more dark here. A little more violet. Dark. Let's drop this line in here. This little ridge line here. You can see I'm going a little darker now, but still I'm not as dark as I can be. So you can see now I still feel this is a little dark right into here, but it is, let's go to a big brush here, but it is not too far off, right? So let's just push in some ridge lines here. Of that right in there. So I'm emulating some of that, and then we'll and sometimes it's good to change brushes up. You don't see me do that really a lot, but here where I love this mountain range, and I love to capture some of that. I love all up along in the Pacific Northwest. That's where I was born and raised. Playing around these mountains in my youth. Let's just lighten that just a bit. Some of these streaky marks there. And maybe a bit more of some of that. We'll add some more streaks and shadows in there. Violets, little burnt siennas. And you can thin it and still have some body to the paint by adding a touch of open medium. That will thin it out for you here. And so we can get a little bit of that. That's not quite violet, not quite blue enough. You got to be very fearful of this blue. It can take over really quick. So I used to always tell my students when we painted a bunch of paintings is to always sneak up on your painting. Sneak up on it. Don't go in there and go bang like I did there. Sneak up on it and work it that way. Here. will, by the time I start to add some of these darks up here up front, you're going to see where we're going. These real darks, you'll see how much room we have back here to paint this hill and mountain back here. Here. Get some of this. I love the modeling of those colors now. So sometimes some beige and stuff comes out of my brush, and sometimes the purples and stuff come out of there, which is really kind of neat and fun. And just drop a bit of this there. That's really kind of neat. Yeah, that's gonna work out all right. Let's take a little warmer, slightly blue and the medium beige gives you that kind of gray color. A little bit of violet in there. This gray, warmer gray here. Just mostly into that beige though. Oh, I hit too much blue. Get a bit more beige into that. And pretty heavy into the color, but I want it to lean just a little bit violet because that's the distance. Blue and violet are the distant colors that you're working here. Let's see what that is. It's just a touch green, just this touch green, so it needs just a touch more violet. Blue and violet here. And let's not use it. Let's go to open medium. And so violet, some white. And actually I'm going to need quite a bit of this because I'm going to palette knife that ridge line there, or that slope, that plane here. So let's just push that out there. There we go. We'll put some violet in there as well. See a little bit of green and some of this violet. That makes it really pretty. Let's take our smaller brush with some of this violet, thin it just a bit because we're going back here. And we'll just add some of that back here. And I'm going to start doing a lot of this, painting across the mountains with some common color. And this is a landscape technique of harmonizing some of the different planes. So we do that. After we get some of the interest, then you can harmonize some of the different planes by just taking and taking some common color. Let's warm that a little lighter. Taking some common colors. This would be a light struck plane. Leaning left is light. So right in there. There we go. Lean some of that in there. Right like that. Some of those edges and stuff will go right, climb right up there, right up in there. There, like that. That looks pretty good. Here. Right like that. Because it's going to create that little valley and stuff coming down here. A little bit of light. So here's that snow. Right there. I like, you know, the second time coming through, boy, adds so much more. Some of that coming through there. Right up like that. You know, little edges of those lights and warms, snow. Painting it back and forth and back and forth. That's what you get. And I know it probably makes a real boring video. I should probably, you know, push this forward a little bit and just show you what I'm doing. But I think watching it and stuff will like this, gives you a few more ideas. Now I'm going to take some of this dark and model this all up and utilize this into some of this to take some of that light color streaking in there as well. You can come in there with a smaller brush and emulate all of those rocks. And my thought, you know, I loved it. That's why I picked it. But it's actually, they're actually distracting a little bit from where I want my center of interest up here. So I'm not going to push that too much, I don't think. Let's grab some more burnt sienna, a little blue. Here, a little more burnt sienna into that. Let's grab some of this, maybe just a bit more violet. That's too violet. There we go. Get that blue in there. Some of that. This is actually, see, it's a more forward hill, and it doesn't have all of the snow on it, but we're going to have some tree lines on it and stuff. So it's coming more forward here. But we could have some color interest. We'll put some tree lines up there. We could have some color interest there. And then, of course, some of the slopes and stuff, some of the verticals and stuff here. That's going to make it more. Now, look at that, and look at, you know, back here we thought, ooh, that's really dark. And it's changing. It's becoming lighter, right? Yeah, that's the contrast of it. Now, you know, I could still push, even though my, you know, it's really a judgment call here. Even though my photo and stuff shows that much darker there, I might want to just add a few more lights right in here. And let's put just a few more darks, angles, like these are more ridge lines right in here. Tap through that a bit. Get some more interest right in there. Maybe more of a point there. And just to get some of this light brown back in there, which we had against that other snow. A few little lights. And so, yes, you can use that photo, but sometimes we're painting a painting here. And so, you know, like, there's a lot of interest right into this area here, but boy, I certainly don't want to add all of that. I could add ridgelines like this, but then, boy, that would really be too much. So I'll put them in, and then I'll start softening them out, because it would really be too much for the painting, I feel, where I'm going with that painting. But let's go with a smaller bit of my light, because that's that real light side. That's left, leaning left, right? So we'll get that light right up there. That's kind of neat. We'll add just a bit of that right up there from the back of that one. Right, a little bit of that light violet back there. Just touching back into some of those other colors just does wonderful things. But you can see it starting to, you know, come together here as we work this. Now, I've got all of this big sloping stuff to put in here, and I'm going to put it in kind of thin, kind of soft. A little bit of my grays and violets and stuff here, because we'll add other colors into it, but I don't want it to. It's big area, so we're going to pull all the way down here by the lake here, and I don't want to pull big long lines, and I'll leave some of that light coming through here. Some of this will get darker back up here. We're going to put trees up along here. And so as I come out of this mountain here, You know, we're going to put the slopes in, and then we'll get the trees in and all that stuff. But we'll, there we go, grab some of these big sloping planes here. Grab some different colors, some lights here. Right down into this little valley here. And we'll put trees and snow. We have a little bit of snow we can drop in there. So let's just take some of our violet here. Get rid of that beige there. Some of our violet, a little bit of blue. Some of our snow here. Colors, let's just look here a little bit. You know, the snow is, and I was just thinking, you know, painting this, is this the first snow? Because it's still kind of fall colors in the grasses. Is it the first snow hitting there? You know, and I was thinking, you know, when I always think of a story when I start to pull some of this together. So is this just the first snows and stuff showing up? And he's moving cattle from the high country back down, you know, and which is really kind of neat. Neat storyline there, right? I have to put the real big one up on my monitor, move that other stuff as I go to work the details. I do like a monitor because I can see more. But this is really, you know, it's like I say, this is the blocking in. You know, yes, I got a lot of detail in there, but it's blocked in. Mostly I consider this blocking in still, even though I got a lot of interest back there. You know, to work that, that's just, yeah. And so I'll get some more colors and stuff. Let's get over burnt siennas, yellows. A little bit of the blues and violets will help tone that down just a bit. We don't want it too bright. Oh, that was too much. Here, let's thin it with some extender. Then I'll get more of a wash here. And I'm going to have lots of, let's take a look at that. Could be neutralized. Now, how would you neutralize it? You know, and somebody would go, oh, it's too much. Okay, so what do? Sky, atmosphere. Atmosphere is always where you go. So we'll take some of our violet and white here. It's the atmosphere is where you go. Now, I have blown through all of my white, so I'm going to grab some more. So when you want to soften, because as stuff gets softer as it goes back, it becomes more like the sky, the background, the sky. And so we will soften that back here. A little bit of this. And see, that just softens that. So we get that nice, beautiful slope back there. Right back into there. We've got to get that lake in there too. I took out my lake. Right? So we want to have that lake right in there. There we go. But this will work, and we'll have that big tree right up here. This will be beautiful colors right in there. Has that mountain slope right there. So, and don't cut it in half. So take some of that same color, pull it in over here. Even though one side's going to be shadow and light, light's coming through that area there pretty good. But that'll keep us going, right? See, I love this fracturing. And sometimes I'll just take the brush through there a bit, break it up a bit. I love powerful brush marks like that. So I wish there was more snow showing up on the other one there. I do that, but we do have some light grays here. Right up and through here we could, that's a little too green, so a little more burnt sienna, which will help neutralize the green. Maybe just a touch of the blue. Give it a little bit. And violet. There we go. Get some of that light through there. Like those. Yeah, so you see some of the brush marks. That's really where you get the interest now into those areas. And we're going to do trees all along there. So that'll be pretty nice. But let's just take this thin, a little this thin, and we'll go ahead and paint back in here. Trees we can do pretty easy, right? We'll push that back. Get some of this up along him here. Some of that back, and we'll put all those trees in there before we call it a day. This is later in the day. Usually I don't start a painting this late in the evening. It's almost 5 o'clock. But I got all my chores done, and I wanted to start painting with you guys, so I'll get this thing going, because I'm really kind of excited about this one. I just love it. Now I want to work on that. Let's go back in and let's put some of that water in. Water is sky. So I got it right here. So we'll add a little violet to it. And we got to go up pretty light. But I don't, it depends on, this is called the angle of incidence. Whenever, I had a really great question is, how do you know whether water's light or not? And it depends on the angle of incidence, where the sunlight is, where it's reflecting, and the angle at which you're looking down at the water. And so this water will have because we're up a little higher, it will be a touch darker, but it will reflect the sky somewhat. So we'll push that in, and then I'll work a little light into it here. And this is not done, but it's going to emulate it pretty nice. Let's push in a little more light here. There we go. And sometimes I really just like to take I love the knife and just smear it across with the knife a bit, and then I'll take it out of everywhere else and soften it out. But I just love the casual nature of the knife, what the knife does. So we'll drop that in there. That'll look pretty good. So our water going, well, it's not done, but it'll give us an idea where we're going to go here. Here. Give us there we go. Back up that line right up there. Back up this. We'll put a bit of the rocks and stuff right back up here, like it's gonna coming up this little valley there. A few things, right? A few little edges. A few little dabs of color to little blues and some of my browns here. Gets down, because down in here you would be actually down into some of the shadows, but we'll get some of that in there. That'll be good. A little bit of our light snow back in there. Right in there, just some ideas of it here. There we go. Just like that. That's pretty cool. That's soften that edge just a bit. Too much texture right there. So this water will dry down, and I might have to lighten again. I think I'm just going to give it a little dose of the light. Just to see, it's almost like a little glaze, and it just softens that water back there for right now. And so then we'll come up to the front. Now, up to the front, now this is where, I had this all drawn, and then I asked my daughter to come look at it. And she goes, Dad, she goes, it's really great. But I had right in here, this line, at about halfway between my top and bottom here. She goes, I see it halfway. And I was like, I got so wrapped up into it, I didn't see it halfway. So I went, oh, well, yeah, you're right, halfway. So I'll change that. And I did. But, Yeah, and decided to add some extra little stuff going on back here. And so I'm going to start out here with just a real light neutral yellow. So a lot of medium beige, some yellow, some burnt sienna, real thin with some extender medium, maybe a little bit of our grays from our sky and stuff here. We'll see here. Yeah, just I want it just a little more yellow and a little more thin. And I'm going to wipe it down with a paper towel here. And I'm just, not so much that I destroy my pattern, but I want to get rid of the white of the board here. And then we'll start doing something fun here. So I want to, and I don't want to do huge wash of it, but I just want to push this in. This is going to be the underpainting of it. Matter of fact, I can just kind of go through everything here because we'll put the horse and everything up on top. So this will be a real good here. Let's push that back here. We'll come over here, push some of that back in here. Let's just, because I can see my whole pattern, you know, my drawing, not pattern, my drawing through. So many years I was a decorative painter and we would create patterns and we'd show everybody patterns. And so I'm so used to, I've taught that way for 25 years, so it's easy for me to say that. So here, we'll just put that on. So I still see my horse and everything through it. It's a nice, soft, it's a warm, I want a warm, cool feeling here. Let's just add just a little bit of warmth to that here, where we want here. So a little warmer as I come forward. And I'm just checking the colors this way, guys. That's what I'm doing, this real warmth, right? Here. Yeah, that works. And then let it just start to go more atmospheric as it goes back. That's the rule, right? So this real warm yellow, some green into that. This will come way forward. Burnt siennas, yellows, greens. Let's get some of those colors right in here. So we create this warm, cool right in here. And my drawing is pretty dark, so I can lay this color in pretty nice like this and still have a good feel of the painting. We do have other things we have to add, like their cast shadows and stuff like that, but some of this. Now, this is brush marks from being too thin, so I'll just take my brush and lift the pressure. And I don't like taking big long strokes, but sometimes you got to like that just to soften it out here. So here, we'll push some of that right in there. Now, I'm going to use this big brush. This is my 1-inch brush. I'm going to use this and I'm going to create some of this very thin green, burnt sienna, little blue, little violet, kind of a darker color here. And I'm going to create a little interest here and a little interest back this way. So it takes you back a little bit, like the slope will be back there. So I got that a little dark on this side here. I'll lighten it in just a minute, but I want this ridge line, and then of course my trees and stuff will be there. But I want my vision here, how I want to paint it is, this is a ridge and it looks down right here. So we want to have a little bit of dark in here. Of course, it'll be darker up into the front, but we want that little bit of dark and that little bit of dark right in here so that this one sits lower than that coming back. Some of that goes back in there. That'll work. Yeah. So we will, there's a lot to do on this, but at least we'll get it blocked in here. Here, push that back. So you can push hard and take some of that off. So I have that ridge line right there. That's what I want to have. And then, of course, the darker colors of blue, burnt sienna, some green, a little violet, they're all going to come up here. This is going to be eventually our darker colors that are going to set the depth into the painting here, see? And we'll push in, we have cast shadows to add, but these darks will come in here and set some of this up. That's pretty good. Now, good, so that sets, you know, some of our look. Now, while that's just kind of wet and it's easy to do, I'm just gonna come in and base in some of the things I know. And my colors will become a little bit brighter. I'll use a bit of the sky color, the violets and the blues here. The sky color, violet and blue, as the gray to tone some things down. But, you know, I'm going to come in and just kind of block in right into the wet paint here. And some of the cows that I have here. And what I'll do is, like here, I'll take a little burnt sienna and a little blue, which will give me a darker color here. And I'll use this, just short choppy motion here, because it's a little difficult to block in when the ground, like I just put on, is so wet. But I do like doing it because I can soften edges. So it's not like working on something that is, you know, really dry, that you'll get those edges. So here I can soften them out quite a bit. So, you know, I like doing it this way, working into the wet, because I can soften edges. And but it is a little bit more difficult sometimes. Here, let's just take a softer little back leg here. A little more of the burnt sienna into the front leg. We've got a long ways to go. This is just so I can see the painting a little bit more here. Get this back shoulder, that leg in there. There's her belly here. And as this dries up, I like to come back and add a few more little marks, model her up a bit like that. That'll work out pretty nice. Let's get her face in here. She's going to have a white face, so we might as well. And I might just go down in size. Well, let's keep it simple. Let's just make a simple gray. Light blue gray. Keep her simple here. There we go. A little bit here on her back of her neck, like she's a really good Hereford there. And a little bit around the eye and the ears here. A little bit into the nose. Yeah. A little more right down in here. I just love painting into that wet like that because I can really easy to soften, blur an edge. And that really is nice. There we go. And she's got a lighter little gray baby here. We'll just drop in some colors. We'll go in and paint those really nice, but we'll just, for now, we'll just drop in some color. See, it's wet like this, so I just work a brush of the browns and then a brush of the whites, and it just kind of does some of the work for you. But I'm not putting a whole lot of of emphasis into doing anything spectacular right now, because we don't need it here. No real definition yet. Just the idea here. So we'll there. A little bit there on the head. This one right up here, a little more burnt sienna, a little bit of our dark. Let's just come in here, put some more color on this little one, and then right into some of the white. I love the coloring on this. I found this photo a long time ago on Adobe Stock, and I've had it sitting in a file that I just called cows. And whenever I want to have some inspiration from cows, I go to my file that says cows. And so I've had this one for quite a while. Here. Some of that modeling there. And a little more color into the face here. That'll be kind of fun. This one's going to be fun. There. Yeah, and darker mama back here. So, and we'll just let this dark color, so this blue burnt sienna, just work right into our soft, so she'll get the feeling of it being dark, but it'll work right into that wet ground there, see? And it softens her out. So, a little bit of cow ears. Just the idea of the face. Here. Kind of fun. Long way to do that, but that's just kind of a great way to get them in. Let's put some of that dark right on the side of her face here. You know, they have that big flat plane on their face, so we got to get that. But you can come back, since she's really up front, you can come back as this starts to tack up. And because I haven't been adding any extender to this, as I did this, it starts to tack up. See, you can really get some beautiful effects. So here's just a little more burnt sienna coming in there to bring that, to bring her more farther forward. So you can get some really nice effects. Yeah. And here we go. That looks pretty good. A little darker, bit of extender, so because that's drying up right there. I'm just trying to not mix any more colors. We'll just put in the idea of where that cow's going to be. We'll do some more stuff with it. And we'll go into, now, you know, I was going to change the color of this horse, but I don't think I will. I think I'm going to keep this most here, keep this burnt sienna color to this horse. And we'll see as we get going here, but I do like that. And I want to get more opaque in this horse now. So even as I block it in, I want this a little more opaque because this is going to establish the depth of the painting here. This is the dark. So now you'll see this is really where our dark is going to come from. So burnt sienna, a little blue, a little bit of the violet. That makes you real dark. And the red violet makes it even darker. Matter of fact, you could go red violet, touch a green, which is what I use a lot. as well as real dark. See that real dark kind of coloring there? We can use that here on the horse on the side here. We'll get that light up in the on the nose, but some of that dark right down in through here. That dark on this back leg, one furthest away, right in there. And we'll go lighter, maybe even a little bit of our Diarylide. Let me step out over here. Diarylide, maybe a little Hansa, a little bit of white. But I love burnt sienna Diarylide to really set some lights. There. That's where that light is going to hit. Let's get some of that lighter yellow up here. And that's, you know, that's just an idea. I don't worry about being absolutely perfect with it like right now. Just get that color in, right? Get that color in. This is a big painting. We have a long ways to go. Just get some of that color in there. And long way to go here. But it's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll build this front plane. But that's my thought process, you know, as we're watching this, as you're watching this. My thought process is, you know, I kind of envisioned this horse. This horse is going to be the darkest in the painting, really. So, you know, we really got to get some more shadows, which we can do right now. Some blues, some red violets here. A little more red violet, that nice, real deep cool, which will be right up in through here. And this is like some of the darkest that you'll see here on the horse. It's on this real shadow side back here. And that's really what's going to bring this horse way forward and set those mountains way back. So we've got to get some of that coloring on there, right? So, yep. Just love doing this. The blocking in to me is just the prettiest part of the painting, the most fun part of the painting, because you start to see it coming together, right? Don't know if I brought out the right brush to do that. Here's just a small flat. This will work. Little grays, little whites here. I have some of that on that edge of the horse here. Here, just putting in that gray, almost the snow color. And then we got that ridge here of his eye, which we'll put in. Might as well put a little violet into his eye here. And I'm gonna set that violet dark right in there. Then we'll get rid of that, put in just some yellow sienna stuff here. Here for his, I just love horses. There's something, you know, I painted the one with the buffalo with a horse that was not the same as this, not the same angle, but pretty similar, and I just love those. I love that look, that angle that's here. So we'll put in light hat here. Again, just bringing through some blue jean colors. I like the blue jeans. It seems like this year I've painted a lot of cowboys with blue shirts and blue jeans and stuff on. Well, this guy has it, so we'll... But you see how wet that is. See how it just slides really easy? So we have quite a bit to do. And I don't need to put a whole lot of light, but I'm just going to put a little bit in there. Just setting that up. See those blues, those contrasts, those colors will give it that'll give it a lot of interest there. Got that saddle to put up there. Now he has a real dark shirt. The thing is, did I give that dark? Yeah, probably. A little more violet into his shirt. Real dark. Gray it with just a blue, violet, and some burnt sienna to gray it off here a bit. We'll just gray it like that. Yeah, that's kind of a nice color for his shirt here. But this big number 10 is not the easiest to base something in with. But we'll just, see, I can just lighten the pressure here and create light values and some of that movement. And you might want to be a little more careful with your drawing. I'm just going to put it in there. And I'll adjust it as I get going. But let's get some more burnt sienna here for the idea of his saddle. Just the idea. Here. Light color, he's got these, looks almost like the metal stirrups here. So we'll just put an idea in there. Light saddle blanket. Again, we'll just put the idea in because we'll be coming back a lot. Just some of that idea. Yes, so just bases him in. That's just. Now I'm just going to take that smaller brush again and just a little burnt sienna and white light color. Here, just for right now. Got a lot of little detail to do there. Maybe some dark for his hair right here. Nothing big. This is just, and sometimes I just blur edges so that I don't have to worry about, you know, getting too precise. Just blur the edges there. And I do like to do that, to blur the stuff so I don't have to be perfect. This is his arm crossing, leaning up here on that, the saddle horn. There we go. Yeah, that'll work for right now where we are. I think that's pretty good. I could take a little more blue, some of my dark burnt sienna and stuff, and put in a little more dark here and there. Get some of those violet colors in there. And sometimes it's like I put up a short. If you haven't seen it, you should go see it. I put up a short this morning. It's the Monarch of the Glen, and I worked back and forth between lights and darks, and I really enjoyed that. So here I put the dark on, and I'll just model through with some of these lights like this. And this is kind of how I'm envisioning painting the horse here, because on that Monarch of the Glen, it gave a lot of really beautiful interest to that to that red stag, Edmund Landseer's red stag, Sir Edmund Landseer red stag, which was really neat. But so anyway, that pretty much blocks that in. Now, one thing I do want to do, so I'll take some of this violet, let's thin this out, just a dirty kind of gray. One of the things that I do not want to forget in all of this is my cast shadow. So light's coming from basically the back up here, back up this way. So I want to cast some of the long parts of this shadow here out like this. We got a long ways to go, but I want it to cast out like that. Could be this way a little bit more, but just so I don't forget it. You know, I've painted paintings before and cast shadows are so important, and I've sit there and I've forgotten cast shadows, and they are so important, so I don't want to forget these. We'll just spread these out a bit just to get that. Now, probably have to adjust that a little bit, but you can see how those cast shadows, just what they really do. But we got a long ways to go, a lot of things to do, set up some really nice interest back in there. But yeah, this will get us started, right? I'm going to rinse out some of these brushes. I'm notorious for not cleaning up my brushes, so I'll do that. But anyway, hope you found that fun. I didn't take any breaks, or I just drug you around with me the entire time. So if you get a little bored, just fast forward me, just work through it. But if you like to, you know, it's kind of fun to paint along too. Those of you that are going to paint along with this one and set this one in. We have a lot of stuff to do, a lot of trees and stuff like that to put in here. As a matter of fact, if you want, some of that is still wet, because this is it's still wet right in there. You could take some pine green burnt sienna, some of these darks that are right in here that just make it really pretty. A little bit of those violets. And thin it. You don't want to get opaque yet, because this is a dark color. So thin it. And, you know, I'll drag in like this to create the ideas of some of the pine trees. And sometimes I do that pretty soon in the painting. Sometimes I do it a little bit later. And I think I'm going to do most of this a little bit later. But I'm going to come back and forth, especially with like the next part of the painting, and we will set some of that in. Set some of this stuff in here so that you'll get even more interest. And I love that. I love just setting it in with the brush like this, giving some verticals and stuff like that. So, and we'll talk about that on the next video as we add some more of this stuff. But we can really get a better idea where we're going to go with some of this now that we have some of these other darks in there. So we'll be adding all of that, and that's going to help all of this area in here. But you can set some of it in now if you want. You know where we're going to go. And I do love, you know, working that in the wet form here, especially if I'm just going to set that line here and just set that. See, that just really gives a nice contrast there of where that's going to go here with this guy. And maybe we'll do this just a bit more here. But you can see it's soft and it's not as contrast yet as I can make it. I'm just putting some of the colors in here, right here, so you can see some of that. I like the roughness of it. And I love the verticals and horizontals and using the paper towel and stuff. So, but a little bit of extender, keep it kind of transparent. We'll add bushes and stuff like that back through here. That'll help us give out some of this depth that we're going to have. through here. Yeah, right out through there like that. Set some of that. So quite a bit of it back up and through here. Quite a bit of it. Here. Everyone, well, okay, so I had to take a little break there. As some of you know, my two little sisters, the little yellow labs here, run the studio, and they had to go outside. So I decided to take a moment there, grab a bite to eat, have a cup of coffee, and I freshened up my palette here, and I think we'll just keep going from there. Okay, so sorry about that little break. Let's go on. And I was sitting there looking at it during the break, and I was having a cup of coffee, and I thought, I'm going to come in here. And I like the depth that we're developing here right now. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to work on this horse and maybe these cows right up over here, bringing them forward a little bit more before I do any, you know, I blocked in just a little bit idea of the trees, but before I go do anything more back in here, so I get a good impression of the depth. And, you know, that's something I like to do. So let's go in and first work on some of the main body of the horse, putting in some more colors. You've seen me do this quite a bit. I'm going to grab a larger brush. I'm going to put out my extender medium. Oh, and when I freshened up my palette, I forgot to put out some open medium. I like the open medium. You know, I'm mostly now more of an acrylic painter, and the open medium keeps it nice and wet, but I have really, especially in the last couple of years, really liked the marks and when they're more dry, so it's not quite so much wet into wet. I do like what we did here, blurring off those edges, but when it comes to really grabbing that punch of the painting, I like to go a little more dry. But give it a try. All of us are different. See what it is that you like to do. Okay, so let's come back in here. And I put it up here on the big screen, and you see it so much better on the big screen there. So I'm going to come in there and look for some of let's go back in and state some of our darks. Now the darks are burnt sienna, a little blue, a little violet, and then extender. And this extender is important because I like to keep my darks slightly transparent in everything I do. So I'm just going to restate them. Actually, there's a little bit of Hermaine right here coming over. And I love that depth of that violet. Maybe a little mark or two here, some darker marks of the blues in there. Nice dark right in here onto her leg. I'm going to do a really good job here on this horse, especially anatomy and stuff of the horse. I love painting the horses. Especially the last couple of years into the westerns, I'm getting better at it, and I love them. And I just want to put a little bit more into this painting, and you can see how those darks really do help there, right? And so we'll do that. Let's grab this one back here and push that back leg right back in there. And again, you know, that light, this helps us with the light. I might even shift the light just a little bit more to the front to get, and maybe hit it, because you can see it. It's hard to see here, but up on the big one there, you can see right up by her ears and the top of that head, she gets hit with that light. And I really do love that. Now, when I go in for the depth of the body, especially when I'm painting any kind of sorrel or chestnut or this little bay, I like to have a little bit of my Diarylide inside that burnt sienna. Gives kind of a glow to it, to the horse's colors here. So I love that. And so I'm just going to push some of that in there. I love those colorings. And you can just kind of see a little bit of a glow there. And then we'll work also some of our dark burnt siennas and the blues and stuff over here. I want to work the anatomy here of this. So this is how I normally work through. And on a forward object like this, like on this horse, I may do this 3 or 4 times to get her anatomy here up a little bit higher, closer, and some of that. And I love them, like even a little bit of the medium beige and the white here into this, give that reflective gray color that happens from the shimmers that they get when they're up by the light. And see, I'll follow some of her structure here. Follow that, you know, they have a couple of big muscles that's here, this big flat, and I want to, as I put this bigger flat area in here, I'm going to grab some yellow, some light. I'm going to put it in a little lighter and then push it back. And actually, it's a little gray. I was using some of this gray here, a little gray. Let's put in that big muscle here. And so I might, just for the interest of the painting, bring her up a little bit lighter than what she actually is. Develop it a little bit more. She gets that light right up here. And so I put in a light like that, and some of you just go, oh, wow, Dave, you kind of screwed that up. No, what I like to do is sometimes I will and this is a good thing to remember, you know, to get more interest, I will over-apply it, then paint it back into place, okay? So here, so I over-applied it. Now I'll take a little bit of my medium colors here, half-tone it down darker, and paint it into place. But see, this allows me to have some more brush movements, brush marks that show up, and that gives more interest into it. So I'll pick up a little touch of that light, just pull that down, and that just gets a bit more interest and stuff up in there. So I love to do that, and I'm going to do that right back up here, like onto her rump. We'll push that light. And now the dogs are really happy because they're snoring away here. We'll get a bit of the burnt sienna back in there again. And seems like this year I've painted a lot of bays and sorrels and horses and stuff and chestnuts. I just really like them. And grab a little bit of that light back in here. I want to grab a bit of that dark so we can emulate, even though you don't see in the photo too much of her tail, I'd like to kind of give an idea of that. I'll blur that out, and a little bit of it right back in here. And so you see into the photo, she has that light that's coming through there. I'm going to build up this leg a little bit more. I don't like, you know, the leg is turned outside towards you, looking a little bit, so you see that. And I don't always like that. I will change the anatomy around just a bit for what I like to do sometimes. So we'll push this shadow right back into here. And this is, that girth strap will come right in there. And a little bit of that blue and a tiny touch of that light gets that reflective gray color, which is really nice. So I got it right over there. So it's blue and burnt sienna here, and a little bit of light, sometimes that medium beige, and you get this kind of reflective, too much blue. You know, that phthalo is so powerful. And so you get this reflective gray color here. That's really nice, that I'm actually going to overstate just a bit in this painting on her. So she comes up a bit more, right like that. See, I love that. I love that shimmery, and I love the tones we can create with that. A little more burnt sienna, so you see that. And so what I'll be, working on here is basically her muscle structure. Very similar, to what we've done in other paintings. We've done these together. So I'll get this other bit of this light right out here. She'll have that thick muscle there, and that throat shadow here. It comes in right in here. I'll just pull down this way. My big quasar, he always had such a deep shadow here. His throat just pulled out. And we'll work a little bit of light. So I'll work this and see when I see all these different tones that are coming in here now. I love that working of those tones. That's where she's really going to come out. Let's grab just a bit more blue. And yeah, right in there, that'll soften that out just a bit. And we'll push that blue, burnt sienna, a little bit of violet here. Nice dark. Right up here, you can see just her mane is kicked over to the other side. But you do a little whisper like that, maybe a little bit coming in there like that. So, you can see just a little bit of it. Some of these gray tones. There. Okay. A little bit of darker burnt sienna. And, I'm using here my number 10, and I'm using just the corner of it. And that's where I get a tremendous amount of interest there. But as it starts to tack up and dry up, I love the acrylics when they start to tack up and dry up. And then I lay in these colors like this, and then I can start laying in small marks of light color, getting lighter and lighter. So I'll grab some of these colors, a little lighter, a little beige, a little bit of my oranges stuff here, a little lighter, like this. And I'll come in light, and then I'll hit some yellow, but see some small marks like this. Now see, remember what I said, I overdo it. So then that gives me light that a real yellowy kind of stroke can show up a little bit more. We can head over to that orange just a bit where that light is hitting her right in there. A little more orange right in there. That bright light here, and a little bit of that light right in here. Then we'll push that shadow of that muscle in there, right? So I light it up, and so you see, and then we have some of the shadow of the muscle. I'll cool the burnt sienna down just a bit. Right in here, we'll get that shadow of that muscle right there. And then, those strokes kind of change. Gets a little bit of that gray mark right here. That softens that exchange right there. And then that light, a little more light, smaller, right up on the edge, hits right up her rump here. And this is where I really like to do it kind of rough, because you get that shimmery look there on her. I'm going to bring that yellows up a bit right here, right where she has that. There, a bit more here. I love that. Seeing that little bit of modeling there, just as light kind of shimmers around. Let's bring in just a little bit of that right in here. That's good. Some of that slightly grayer tone right down in here. Rounding that down as it's heading down into that shadow. We'll get that muscle shape right in there. A little darker right in here. There's that other muscle. Let's restate that again. There we go, a little bit of that. Restated down, some of this drawing down. So I'll work this, and I'll go into my smaller brush, like you've seen me do on other westerns. I'll go into my smaller brush, and I'll work this down. We'll get some of this back up here. Some of this gray. I'll push some other colors back on top, but you can see how she's starting to build, right? And I really love this kind of grayish color. And you really see that on that big monitor there, because this is into her cooler shadow, but you've got reflected light and shimmers going around here. And you don't see it on the printed photo as much as you see it on the monitor. And I just love the colors that are coming out of that monitor. So I'm going to really kind of caster a little bit of the blue-grays up here into the front. Here, a little bit of that, a bit more, pulling some of this down. See, I love that. See, and so you get that beautiful stroke and mark there. And I'll take some of that, because it's good harmony color. I'll take some of that right around on other areas of her. Let's put it right down. You can see it clearly, though. Right down on the inner part of her leg here. Right in there like that. And some of it right in here on the, you know, they have that real deep muscle onto that leg, the shadow and then that muscle. And yeah, so I'll do that. Now I'm going to go over and do the same thing over here on the cows, working their colors. Here we were making that kind of blue, burnt sienna, and some grays and stuff here, so we get some of this color in. And I'll follow the same technique here. Work in some of the, and it's basically you go dark colors first, so I put in a little bit there to work into, but it's not necessarily wet into wet. And if you put a color on and it jumps too much, you've gone too far. You've separated your values too far. It's mostly a value thing, so just bring your values back together. So I got that on. Then I'll come in and I'll grab some burnt sienna and some blue, maybe a touch of my violet, sometimes a little bit of green, especially on a different cow back here. And then I'll look for the shadows. Now, the shadows look a little different than what they do up there on the monitor, but I'll push that shadow in, and I don't want these shadows too bright. So if that gets too bright, add a little bit, so you know, if it's leaning a little bit towards the like violet side, I use green to you know, to push that over. But you're going to need a little bit of the deeper shadows here, like that. And she's going to have her face and her ears and stuff here are all in shadow on this side here. So we'll push that up here, and a little rough there. Yeah. We'll add some small bits of the light and stuff, but I'll do this. You've seen me do this 1,000 times on the Westerns, working that. So I start with the shadows. I go to mid-tones, so I'll lighten up. Usually when I lighten up, I warm up. So I'll add maybe a little bit of the burnt sienna to that, and I'll just drag. I love this, where I just drag, leaving some of the roughness. So if it shows up too much, bring your values together more, and it will look more like you're blending halftones. But I like to have a little bit of difference in those tones there. And then I go up again. Now when I go up to some of the finals there, and I'll grab some more light here, jump up quite a bit, make another couple of values, smaller brush here, and I'll work that light edge, kind of like what is there on her over here. I'll work some of that light edge, some of these edges here, right in here like that. And so where do you see the lights? You know, there's parts of her body that it's hitting and stuff. And so when I get a big difference between light and shadow, you know, I may take a little bit of shadow in my brush right to where it's a little halftone and soften some of that out a bit. So I go back and forth like that, working those values, and we have some real soft. Sometimes I'll add a little extender to keep if I got a good color, to keep it working. Sometimes a little open medium here. But I'm just going to work like this, and it'll take a few times for me to get the feel of it that I want to have. So I like almost like that little dusty look there coming down between. But dragging some of those lights and darks, and got to remember she's going to be further back. We'll get some more lights and darks just like that up in here. And I always do this. This is always a real good idea, especially the horse is our main subject, right? And so whenever I put some of that color on there, I'll come back and say, oh, okay, she'll have a little light right in here. Maybe I'll touch some of that light there. Maybe I'll take it just a touch more to the orange that I used, but I'll carry the color. This creates some harmony in our painting here. I'll carry that color back into my main subject, which always creates a little bit of harmony into the painting. Harmony is carrying a common color through, so you know, when you pick up some of those colors, see that translates right back up over there and everything starts to work, right? Okay, so that's basically what I'm going to do. Work darks, midtones, lights, wherever you see them, and work the colors up into the white cows. These little guys, I'll go into my violets, a little bit of the blue-violet grays, stuff that we did, and then into these and stuff like that, I'll have more of the burnt siennas and blues, more of the burnt siennas and blues. This one a little bit more blue, this one a little bit more burnt sienna, sometimes a little bit of green. And we'll knock these right on out, right? Get some of these first colors in here. So I'm going to work on the horse, and I'm going to work on these cows. And I'll show a couple of video clips along the way, and we'll get some of this stuff done. Get it all blocked in and done so we can keep going with the landscape, okay? All right, see you guys in a minute. Hi everyone, welcome back. Well, it's the next day and I went in and I showed you some clips and stuff of it here, working on some of these. And I painted this little guy back here as a white one last night, and then I came back this morning and went, it's creating too much contrast out through here. So if I make them both, like this is a small, a Hereford calf and mama right here or something like that, then I would get really kind of a better pathway up through here, because these two were, you wouldn't have that contrast of hue of the same colors or different colors. So I did that. I came in, I see I got a little wet color right there, and I built up his shoulder and stuff here a little bit this morning and just added a few little shadows here so we can start doing the architectural part of the cowboy. So let's go back in and let's work on him this morning here and see if we can get some of those wrinkles and some of that stuff get in there, maybe give him a face or so. I like these gentle coloring here on the horse. Oh, and I did decide to give her stockings here, white stockings, again, for contrast, for interest. And so I don't always copy a photo. I always look at, do I need to change colors someplace to get better movement through or more interest, or in this case, soften it. So I'm going to put this path of light. Matter of fact, let me show you my thought here. So I really want you to come in like this, which means, and then go right up back through here. These will just be noticed, which means I want to give a lot of contrast and in through here. And contrast will push this forward. Now, into the photo, we see some of the light grasses back there, but my thought is to put even lighter grasses back there. So I'm going to lighten up, brighten up even a little bit of our beige and our yellows here. And I want to get up around, boy, almost like a value 8 or so, real up there, way up there, right back in here, back into this area. Light is coming through this area. Now, I will, put the grasses and stuff here. But before I do that, I want to get kind of where I want to have some of those values and stuff through. But look at what that contrast does. Now, this is going to dry down, and I'm always big advocate of what I call sneak up on it too. So if you're not sure, take your time and work at a little bit lower value, and then come up into it. And let's get this. I love this little bit of a dip down in her chin there. So I got to get that in there. But I want that lighter value right back down in here a little better, which will, and of course we'll put the shines and stuff in there. But that's going to push that light right back up through here. A little bit of that light will come back up through here before we get into our cast shadows and stuff like that. And then it will die down, diminish down as we go here more towards the medium beige here. So we'll put a mark or two of the medium beige out here before we get into some of that distance out there. So you'll see that light coming through. And I want that light. So I'll lighten up the rump of the horse here and stuff, but I want that light to kind of cast through. This is my thought here, because, we're painters of light. We really are. It's the light that gives the interest and stuff to our painting. So we're going to want a little bit of that light casting that back up here, which will go good. And we'll lighten up her rump and stuff like that. So I want that light to go through. But look at the contrast so we've got this real dark, cool side of the horse contrasting against the light. And boy, I tell you, for years as an artist, I would have such a difficult time putting that much contrast into something. And as I became a little bit more of a impressionistic painter, I started to get a little braver with some of the stuff I do. So I get light a little better. I could have that just a little lighter. Now I'm going to paint in the grasses and get all of our grasses and stuff like that in here. But this gives me a target area for my light, and I want it kind of leaving this area a little bit. We'll have some of it cast out through here, but it's going to start, I'm going to start compressing the values as I come out through here. So you see that light, and we can bring in a little more light dark contrast up here into the front of the painting here as well. Grab some of these other colors, but you can see the light moving through a bit more. And then, you know, I like to show you guys this stuff, and then, you know, everything is a whole bunch of just details. And I have so many Westerns. Those of you that are, you know, getting into Westerns and liking it, go back through the channel. There's a lot of Westerns where I show you how I paint the prairie grasses, how I paint a man's shirt, how I paint the saddle. I mean, there's just lots of them there for you to get inspired with and stuff, you know. So we'll have that. But you'll see these, we'll get these prairie grasses in here. Some more of that light dark and stuff going on. Some of those dark grasses and everything going here. But a little more light than what you see in that photo and stuff. And we get this beautiful depth to the painting here, pulling through here. And I'll adjust this to get that just right. But see, that'll look good. Maybe we can bring it down just a touch. So I'm dropping it just one value with a little bit of that forward color there. See how just one value down right there. See the light coming through here. And that is so important, guys. It's so important to the look of your painting. You know, you're controlling it. You're in control of it there. So that this does great things. Okay. So let's, you know, I don't want to make this video too long. And what I want to do is I want to show you guys some of the different areas and stuff, because when I make videos too long, I get a lot of complaints. So I'm going to show you guys the working of some of these areas, and then you can do it as many times as you want to refine it. Now, one of the other things that I did here when I worked on these cows, and I worked on this, and I worked on some of this, is I went out and I got myself a small, this is a small round. And this is in our line of brushes. This is a number 3 round. It's a little round, but it has a real fine point. So I come in here with this, real encroached, real big, and I love the acrylic because I'm working in a dry area. And it allows me to add little touches. I came in and added little touches, little shines, you know. So like watch that, you know, you can just pick up a little white here with this, and right on the rump there of that little calf, you can just like drag that out and add. I especially like it for the little shines. Now when and see that, boom, there's that shine that's right there. Or, you know, and it's real easy to add because you can set your hand down onto the surface, and I can tap a little highlight here, scumble that around. This is called scumbling, dry brushing. Scumble that around and get that fracturing of the light, and I can hit that light. So, you know, a lot of times I talk to you guys about painting with Impressionism using the long handle brush and getting back here to keep the tip soft. But sometimes when you want to add little details or little bits around the face and stuff, just grab your brush, and with the acrylics you can set your hand down and just go in there. And the number 3 round, synthetic round, is really nice because it springs with your hand. The fusion doesn't always spring with your hand. It fractures, which is what I really like. But this springs with your hand. That's why we call it a synthetic round. It's made to spring back, and so you can just tap on little stuff really easy with your synthetic round. So that works pretty well. All right, so let's go in and let's work some details and stuff like that here onto the man and onto his shirt and stuff. So I have some, these colors that I made here is a blue, burnt sienna, a little bit of the red violet and stuff in there. And I made some of that right here and then lightened it up as well. But we'll get the blue, a little bit of violet, some burnt sienna in here. Make this kind of gray color. And I'm going to go back and forth. So I might go a little bit more of the burnt sienna in some of it. You know, he has a real purpley shirt. I want to lean it just a little more brownish gray here, a little more neutral. That would pick up some of the colors maybe of this cow over here. Move my colors through here. So, And I look for planes just like this. So you have all these wrinkles in this shirt that are going down this way. And see, so this is a different color than what I've used before. So I don't cover up everything that I've used before. I just go in there and I'm adding more stuff here. Let's take a mark of it right up through like this, right up towards that shadow, right in there. Maybe some marks. He's got a lot of wrinkles because he's leaning over and his arms are resting on the saddle horn and stuff here. So he's got a lot of wrinkles in this. And so this is like a mid-tone, not the shadow tone. I put a little shadow tone on. Now I'm going to put some mid-tone on, and then we'll come back with some light tone here. So I'm just grabbing some of this right there like that. Now let's lighten up. And usually when I lighten up, I'll go pretty light with this, but sometimes I add a warmer color, like a little yellow if it doesn't change the hue too much, or a little medium beige, which gets that gray pretty well. Let's start back. First, let's go even lighter here for just a second. I'll go even more white, maybe up towards an 8 or a 9. And let's just set in right here that real light strike right here, on his shirt that you see right there. And maybe a little bit lighter here. And so, there we go. Just like that. It's like the shine, right? And there's going to be a little bit right here on the back of his collar. Just a mark right there on that, because the light's coming in over that side. And especially if I'm going to increase the light right here, I have to think about that in my painting, right? So a little bit of light coming down onto these edges, a bit of it coming in. And, if you feel more secure about setting your hand down, get that smaller brush and go work that in there. And normally now I'm just thinning this up with a little extender because it's a little sticky right here. But I do like to add, when I do these highlights like this, the open medium. And I do like to set this back this way too. So I'm going to tap this light right along. It's not quite as light as what I just did, but that's going to set the light of where it is on his arm. And he has a couple. I'm not real happy with that second wrinkle he has in there. I think it's a bit distracting. So I'm going to lighten, and I'm going to pull across here some of the lighter color here into this shirt, and I'll blur it just a bit. This is what I like to do. Put it on and pull it back. Makes the highlights not quite so much of a mark, but you'll see a lot of Western painters, Bill Anton and stuff, just leave it direct mark, and it looks great too, but they have a lot of confidence to what they do. I'm getting there. Every year I get a little bit better at it, a little closer to where I want to be. And so I get that a little bit more there. Now he's got a lot of wrinkles right in here. You look up. He's got a lot of wrinkles, and I'm not sure I want to put that many in other than just give the emulation of some of those wrinkles there. A little bit darker as you head over the other side, so I'll just slide up here a little more of my blue and stuff here. Pull some of these down. Simplify. I'm going to simplify some of these. Goes right in there. Just simplify it. So now some of these, like across the shoulder this way, will pull across because he's, got his arm here across. So you'll pull across, maybe arch it just a little bit. Let's lighten back up again right in here and pull a few right where his arm is going to go right down on, leaning onto that saddle horn there. There we go. A few little marks. And then I'll go back into some of my gray shadows. I like to go back and forth sometimes, take some of it out. If I feel it's a little too much, you're back and forth. Try not to make it look too stripy. Try to just find the larger wrinkles. Now, on a larger painting, he's pretty small. On a larger painting, you would put a halftone in that wrinkle to create that subtle transition into the shadow. But he's a small guy, so we can just go light to dark into the painting without any kind of problem, I think. We'll put his lighter collar right down here. Boom, right there and right down that side here. And we can drop and all I do, since he is so small, I usually go lights and shadows. And, you know, like I do when I do small figures in a painting with you, like the fishermen and stuff, and I do fisher, I tell you, we paint light and shadow more than anything else. You don't have to worry about too many halftones because there's just no room for halftones. So we paint just mostly light and shadow. That's what I'll do here. I'll push a little shadow right as that goes around the back of his neck there. And, you know, he's small enough you could just leave a light stroke onto that collar. You know, just like the last, some of the last cowboys we painted when we did Frank Tenney Johnson's Nocturne that I did. That I did in the online class. He left a cowboy hat just absolutely just light. You know, I was so amazed that he didn't even put any shadows or anything, roundness or anything to it. So this will come back down and around. We'll hit that light just a little bit more here. Let's warm it just a touch. And so this sets up the basic foundation. Do I consider this done? No. I will come back and work these again. Okay? But it doesn't look all that bad right now. But I would work it again. And those of you that are bothered by those quick transitions, just give it another, give it another coat and or drop in a halftone. You could drop in a halftone there and take some of that out there. You know, that's up to you. Here, I'll just push that light down like that. I like that kind of stuff there. It gives a little bit of a movement. I push my brush real hard so that ferrule scrapes the surface, and I like that. Let's restate this shadow pulling down this way. Here, I'll pull. Sometimes if it gets too stripy, instead of pulling with the stripe, I'll push against the stripe, and that just blurs it out slightly. And you get a better look that way. And I'll do the same thing here down his blue jeans, a little bit to the violet side here. And if it gets too bright, you gray it off with a little red or a little burnt sienna. And see how immediately starts to gray that off here. A little bit on the violet side, some light here, right? I like a little open medium in these. And again, we work these so he'll have this lighter bit down this side here, right? And that could come a little bit lighter yet. That gives us that really good light here, gives us the ability to really build that light here. And we're building that light coming in from this side. So let's really pull it, and you can see he really has that nice light right there. There, just like that. Now, I'll just come in, even a little dirty here, and just a half tone on that side, just to soften that out a bit. And I look, he's got a bit of a transition there, so I'll just push that in real lightly. I always lighten, and you'll always find right by their knee, right by the transition of the knee, which is right in here, a light to shadow. So there's a light right there. And then I always form a shadow. And I don't always keep going back to the same. I'll remix something that's a little different here and pull that down here so I get some variation what I'm doing. Maybe put a couple of transitional marks here across, pulling that across his pants there, and some with the length, some down like this to give length, and then some pulling across a bit to give the roundness to the leg. Varying it a little bit, right? So this light color comes all the way down. So it goes all the way down here to his boot that is in the stirrup. So it's going to go right down there like that. And a couple of transitions, a couple of burbles here of shadow and light there to say there's his. And let's just put in just a tiny bit of a lighter gray right through here that emulates his waist. And that will give, make that area of his belt stand out a little bit more. So you can take some of that color across. Matter of fact, right in some of this area here, like right around the knee and stuff, you can just pull that across a couple of times. So you just don't get it striped with the shadow, striped with the light. You're breaking some of that up. And so I'm getting some nice roundness, but I lost that direct light of that leg coming down. So I'm going to mix up a little different blue here, a little more violet in it here, and we'll just pull right down there like that, push that slightly different color there. And let's restate the light here. So it gets it really right back here and down that side here. That's the areas of the light on him. And some real nice darker violet in a few areas here. So, shadow angling up this way and down like that. See, and I love that. Some of you might think it's too bright. It's going to dry down. But I watch a lot of Western painters that just put those marks on and they just let it stay. I have a hard time sometimes, but I'm trying to get over that and let it stay. So I'm going to let that stay there for just a bit. And if it's too much, I'll take it out later. But, it's like, it is probably a little too much. You see, this happens after a while. You start questioning what you do. You go, no, maybe. But I might. Well, should charting it down. Because then when I look through, I don't have it anywhere else. Unless I come back and add some of those little bits of those blues to these other cows, that would work. And, in the final of these, I want to put some of that into those over here as well. And some of that bit of that blue, especially as I head to shadows, I like to thin it out a bit, can come right down into here, down into the deep shadows of where his arm is and stuff down here. He's going to have the other arm coming right over here, so we'll need a little bit of our lighter gray right here where this one's going to pop back out and the sun's going to hit it. A little bit lighter gray right here, right over that saddle horn. And some of that pulling right along the top up here, pulling some of those wrinkles down here like that. That's going to be good. And let me just, for right now, put in the lighter flesh color. And we've done this a lot. Simple faces, simple hands, where I keep everything kind of simple. It's a little bit, and we're just going to keep a simple mark there for his hand. It's a little bit darker here, simple mark pulling down. This one actually has a mark where he shows his thumb being out just a bit. So you could do that. You could put a little shadow to the low side if you want, slightly different one. All depends on what you want to do. It's up to you. Just burnt sienna and white. It's a simple, light color there. And I'm going to work on his face here a little bit too. We've done this 1,000 times, burnt sienna and light. And I glazed over see this right here, this little shadow this morning. I took a little shadow from the horse, put it onto his face because I love that like 3-day beard on him. That's cowboy, you know. You don't get up and shave every morning. You know, that's a cowboy. So I like that look. So I'm going to build that in him a little bit. Paint a very simple face here. And you've seen me do this 1,000 times. You can even look to some of the last ones and see me do it. It's just going to be some simple marks of color and push back some of that. So you could see it already starting to take form, and I'll just touch in a little bit for his mouth and a little bit for his eye socket there. Make the eye socket a little bit more of a triangle. I've showed you that before. I'm going to take a little bit of this gray, maybe some of this light that we used here, and work that to the shadow side of this hat here. There. And maybe the back side here a bit. And all of this I'll work again, but you see it refining, right? That's what I want you to do, is just see it refining, and then how much you do is going to be you. So if you made it a lot smaller, your drawing a lot smaller, yeah, you wouldn't be doing much at all with this. You'd just be putting on some marks like that and calling it done, you know, and here it just picks up the light a little bit right there, comes around to the front. Boy, that just works really nice, just leaving that really simplistic. It's nowhere near what his hat is, but you know, I know where light and shadow is on this, and so I'm just going to put a little shadow to the shadow side, which is this side, a little light to the light side. This is down in shadow because it's turning back away from him. But you'd hit a little bit of light right up in here. And I'm just going to leave that really rough right there like that because I like that. But it's a little different than his over there, but I like the way that that's coming out. So now what I'm going to do is go in and just work simple areas. We did this on some other paintings. Those of you that painted the Nocturne with me in the online class, you know I just paint the like the saddle features like a Frank Kenny Johnson, really simple here. So we'll just put on just simple marks for the saddle blanket here, a little bit for this one right in here, and I'll start decorating up these areas with simple tonal strokes. A little bit of gray here, add a little extender, just reconstitute this gray. Sometimes the gray, I like a little medium beige in it here. We put that right up here. That's that saddle blanket pulling down. And you can blur edges and stuff to soften out. You know, we just want to get some of the decoration here on this. Some of this gray here on his. I love this saddle blanket. I used to always ride with the Indian saddle blankets and stuff that have all the weave pattern, but I don't paint those because there's a lot of weaved pattern in them. Get a little bit more of that gray here, beautiful colors, and just touch some marks and lift off and touch some marks and leave it, you know, leave it very impressionistic there, light and shadow and impressionistic. That's going to be the prettiest of this whole thing. It's going to have this bigger saddle horn here, which is the whole front end of the saddle here. It's going to be light, like burnt sienna, some yellows. It's going to come right up because it's going to come right up from his leg here. So it's going to come across there, right up in there. Right, and then I could use some burnt siennas and blues. And we could come in and sketch this in. I use the darks to sketch and draw. So I will draw a shadow underneath that part of the horn, maybe down the sides a little bit, and in there where the shadow's going to be, in there where the tree and stuff here goes up a little higher. Get that shadow in there, right in there. but very simplistic, guys. We come down with the stirrups and stuff here. I'm very simplistic on it. So we'll make a light blue and medium beige and stuff to give this kind of silvery look to it. Very light. You've seen me do this lots of times here. And so we'll grab some of that. Very simplistic. Push that on. And I love this, the simple strokes. Leaving it slightly blue will make it look a little bit more like a silvery color. And grab some of this right up underneath here, this reflected light right up underneath it. And then his boot and stuff comes through. But I'll work some of the edges there on the saddle, work some of the details. I'll show you a little bit on his face when I come back to do that. And then we'll come back and paint some of the grasses, paint some of the trees, paint some more of our landscape back through there, okay? That'll just show you. So there's a lot of other videos on there, guys, where I show all this detail. And I want to keep this painting moving forward. And, but if you need to see it, go back and look at some of the other ones. I have a lot of them, okay? All right. I'll see you back in just a few minutes. Hi everyone, welcome back. So I kept his face and stuff here really simplistic. Really, I just blurred in a little bit of dark color. I reinforced his beard and all that stuff. I did come in and soften this a little bit, widen it out a bit, but overall I like that. Added a few little scrape things here to get some of the interest and stuff to it. I do have to correct a little bit of the anatomy here on the horses and give more of their little fetlocks out to the side if I'm going to let some of this show. I'm not sure because I might put the grasses all up a little bit more. But anyway, so I got some of that in and lightened up his hands again because they kind of disappeared. You have to do that stuff several times, okay? So I'm going to come in and, like we've done before, I'll show you a little bit of the detail work. Then we'll go over into the grasses and stuff. I'll show you a little bit of that and a little bit going back. So I want to go back. First, I think I'm going to put more of since he's sitting in the shadow more than anything, basically some of the hardware here from the saddle's the easiest way to say it here, coming up over his shoulder here, down to this side. This other part would come right up here, and there'll be a thin little strap that actually goes up underneath here, and you could attach some of it. Mine attached all the way to the back there. I should leave a little bit of an opening there in the center. Now I'm going to put it in mostly dark. I will come in and just drag a little light through it so that, and then you get a light dark, just kind of like what you see in the photo there. So just drag some of that through, and we'll come and do some of the same thing. I'm going to go to a slightly smaller brush here, and let's come up and put his reins and his bridle on here. Same way, some of the darks, and he goes one up over the, that's really kind of pointed in there. It needs to flatten out. Before I do this, it needs to, I see some things that I make off just a bit. So this needs to, top of his head here, needs to flatten out just a little bit before it gets up into his ears. And let's just do that real quick here. A little bit of grays, light colors. I'm going to be repainting all of this down in with the trees and stuff there. So all of that, but I love that painterly look. So even when I correct it like that, it's off just a little. It's okay. It's got a lovely painterly look to it, That's what I like. Now, let's go back to our dark here, and we'll draw the back part here down to his little headband that comes in right there. And blue and burnt sienna, and you got to be careful. It's got to be just a little bit more blue, really, to kind of show up. You could add some red, violet, and green, which will turn it even more black. Let's get his right down through here. There we go. And right down, bridle part right down into there. That's good. And I'm going to use probably my round here. Boy, I got really back into these rounds, I tell you, this time. And he's holding the reins right here, so they're going to swing right around like this and up there. And this is, do you do this now or do you do this, some of this? I'm going to go ahead and put this on, but I'm going to be putting grasses on, so I'll go back and do it again. But I just want to show you, this is how I do it. But the grasses are going to wipe some of this out, and he has these big, long reins, which I also have on mine. And so we can put the idea in a little curved bit and stuff in here, but I'm just going to put the idea for right now because essentially here, when I go put the grasses in, I got to go in and do it again. So, but that just shows you I start getting some of that detail. But some of the others, like I have a little bit of gray left over here from his shirt, add some white and stuff to it, just model it up, and you can, like there's a big buckle that's here, right there. You can put a buckle or a little concho or something there if you want on him. Let's just tap a little bit of that. So that there'll be a bit of the light coming through here, because this forms kind of a circle there. Some of that ring. There's another ring where it attaches right down here to the saddle here. You could go on and look at, there's 1,000 different ways to do it. And I had one person comment on it one time, well, how come your bridle there, it doesn't have a noseband. All bridles have nosebands. No, they don't. And I was like, mine didn't have a noseband. I've ridden horses. I rode horses for 30 years and they didn't have none of my bridle stuff had a noseband. This one doesn't have a noseband on it. So yeah, no, they don't always have that. So I'm just going to put that other buckle here. Normally I don't go into too much of this type of detail and stuff, but it is kind of nice. That sits up there kind of nice on that. But you could do that. You could I put a little bit of the girth strap and stuff down through here. There would be a buckle that's right here. You could like give an impression of it. And they're kind of a netting kind of thing here, or braided, looks like macrame or whatever that is. That you can add some of that in there if you want. These are a bit too white, so I'll probably glaze them down just a bit, but I don't want them to stand out too much on there, and they should not have that much space in between them, so that much light should be showing. So I'll just take some of that down, blur it down, stuff like that. But that gives some nice interest. You could put some shines in, like he does have shines, that hit. You can see it up at the top up there. So you could put a few of those shines. There's another little, that's too white, but there's another little buckle down there. Just gray that down a bit. There. And just a lot of those. And but I'm going to have to come back. We'll do some grasses here, and before we run out of time, I've got 30 minutes left on this one. I don't want to go over and make this huge video, since everything that I'm painting here we've done before in other videos. So I don't want to make this one really huge. It's just a super fun painting, guys. Just a fun, see, I could tap the dart back in there and take some of that out, and that just looks kind of neat that way. Okay, so I'm going to come in and I'll blow through a lot of color. Might have to put this out, but I'm going to start up here into the front. I'm going to work some of the grasses. I won't show you all of the grasses. I just show you how I like to work the grasses. And then we'll come back, work some trees and work some of the back areas and refine the design a little bit. I start with darks, and so some green, some burnt sienna, some blue here, some extender. Sometimes I add open medium. I do like my darks to be a little bit more transparent. So I'm going to restate first some of the darks into my cast shadows here, that we have. So I'll add some of those in here. Softer, not quite as dark into the back. So I just let the color run out, and just so I have it gently in there. Up in the very front, let's grab a little more blue and green in that here. Boom. A little more darks. And you can see, like right up in through here, that gets really, really dark. And so I like to step back on my brush and just kind of move this all through here. And I'll leave it with some, just taking the edge of my brush. I like to take the edge of my brush where you could hear the ferrule just scraping on the edge. And then sometimes I like to pull through with my paper towel to give some of that look to it. But I also like to come back and set darker ones in again, pull through again, so that you get some horizontal lines, which horizontal lines are really important as you're doing this to set up linear perspective. So, you know, we need some of those horizontal lines. The grasses are going to be longer here, and then as we go back, the grasses will get get shorter, and also they get lighter because of atmospheric perspective. They'll get lighter. Look at the dark here, and then they're not as dark back there. So add some more extender medium to these. Add some thin little grasses back here, grass movements, but not nearly as high. Not nearly as high as well here. So, and this is why I don't worry about their feet too much, because I usually put the grasses all around, and they'll really get covered up in a minute as I start to work the highlights. So we'll put some of this back here, but smaller back here. See, smaller back there, larger back here, larger ones in here. And so that sets up some good movement. I like that light coming through there. But I love this paper towel doing this. Started doing this once, and I put it on, and I was like, oh, that's too bad. And I started wiping with the paper towel, and I went, wow, that really looks good. And so I've been doing it that way for years now. Now let's come to a medium color. Some yellow, some burnt sienna, a little bit of our medium beige. Don't mix it up all real well. Get it up to about a mediums, up to 5, 6, somewhere up in there, value 5, 6. Might even go a little lighter. Let's take our brush and we'll push this on. Now, see, I like to push it on like this, just like I just did these others here, and then I'll start some of the grass strokes here with this, like this, and also use my paper towel. And we end up doing these grasses like this several times, and that's what gives you all the beautiful interest. So I pull that color heavy, and then I'll lift and pull the color up and down here, and then I'll lift. So even with your cast shadow, you're going to have some grasses that go up above that cast shadow there, see? So that's, you know, really great looking that way. So let's push some of this in. So this is the medium color, and it sets some of our shadows back into the prairie here, or into the grass. It's not prairie, but into the grasses here. Sets those shadows in. And then as I come back here, sometimes I just use my brush and just hit the edges there like that. Hit some of this. Sometimes I do this and just keep it really, really soft back through there, but more heavy grasses up through here. You know, I vary it quite a bit, how I do it in different paintings. And that's why I always say I paint what I need in a painting. I don't always paint, this is the way I always do grasses. Does that make sense? Except with the paper towel. I'm really liking that here. So let's add a few little grasses right in there. See, doesn't that look great with that, just adds that beautiful, and you can add a few little lights, that shimmering lights that you would see through some of those cast shadows there. And it just looks great there, like that. There. And I'll get this a little lighter, a little more yellow. Here, back up in here a bit, where we're going to push that light. Right? And if you get a little blurb of color, just take it and go back and soften it on your See where I say we have to do that again to soften it on your palette there. And then we'll get a little lighter here. And as you work around like this, and I'm not adding that much extender, and I do like to add, as I get lighter, the open medium here, because that makes it more transparent. And I do like some transparency with the lights here. But as I do this through the lighter and lighter and lighter here, then I will also, you have to watch the size, the length of these. So longer back up here, longer grasses back up here, shorter grasses back up through back here. So back here, you just might just be doing, a lot of times if I'm really deep, you know, doing a long painting, I just tap along that edge a little bit and set it in there very softly, just so you don't, because when you look back through there, see, you don't see the grasses. You don't see all the individual grasses. You may give a little bit of a horizontal push up and down, but you don't see that. I want this. We have some trees and stuff to put in there, but I do want a little lifting, vertical lifting. So you can push up and then pull horizontal. Don't forget to pull some horizontal ones here as well. And through all of this, set this little cow back. Just get some of that mottled look back through there. It just looks good. It looks great. And I love the rough look of some of the grasses here. And as these colors tack up, it gets sticky. They get even better as it gets sticky. Sometimes I'll put color on, let it tack up for just a bit, and then come back and add some of the grasses as it gets sticky. Then I like that. But let's go more white, a little bit of our yellows now, brighter. And this we will use right up in front. Now sometimes, I've showed you in the other videos, I like to take this, some open medium, model it in my brush, and I'll come through the area that, you know, just like this with my knife, because the knife gives you a different type of pattern. Does that make sense? I don't like to always the up and down. And then I can come through, soften some of that out here, and then come through, even with my dirty paper towel like this. And dirty paper towel is really good because it picks up all these other little colors, and try to smooth some of that out, but leave a few of the marks. You can go in there with your liner brush. There's a lot of people that go in with their liner brush and do some of that. I love the spontaneity of this. I want to have some of that light, so I'll push it around like that. See, I get that difference, right? And I like that. But you got to remember, as you're pulling this paper towel, guys, you got to remember your linear perspective. It's bigger up here in the front, not as much back here into the back, right? So, yeah, so we'll grab some of this, longer ones here through. Here we go. Some of those grasses right in there. So I'm going to finish up some of these grasses, and not be too much. I'll put a little bit on the here. Then we're going to come back. We got 20 minutes left. We'll come back and I'll show you some of the trees and stuff, and finishing up back up into that mid-ground area, okay? All right? All right. See you in a minute. Okay, everyone, welcome back. So I got a little bit more of that. I reinforced my shadows just a bit. I put the reins back up on here. You could hit it with a highlight if you wanted to. I kind of blurred that edge right there a bit. Now, a lot of artists do that. They blur you create that sparkle, that shimmer and stuff. So, but you can do all that as you want. I'm going to come through here and push back and start to add some of these trees. I love the depth of the colors that are in here, so I have some of the marks. Oh, and I also took some of this real thin with extender, and just lightly moved it here, so this doesn't cut it too much warm and cool, so you see some of that color going back there. Trees, burnt siennas, greens, and lots of extender. Thin this stuff out. A little cool sometimes, a little blue and red violet. I'm going to model these so that they're all different kinds of colors. Sometimes I start them out like with one color and then, go in and do all different kinds of colors with them. But I want to push back. So I'm using this is my number, you can use an 8 or a 10. And I'll give the idea here of some different heights of the trees. And right in through here, we'll just get some different heights to it. Pull some of these up. I'm going to keep these really simple. So maybe a few big ones here. We'll go through and see the the smaller trees and stuff through here. So right up through here, I don't want to cover up all that lake because I want some of that coming through. But so I first set the vertical in. That gives me kind of idea. Blur it out a little bit. I like that with the lake coming through. Maybe some different variations here. A little more blue, burnt sienna, a little darker, just touch of green into that. And I'll use just the corner of the brush just to pull side to side a bit. Sometimes I go back and forth. Sometimes I just pull one side heavy. Usually, I'm doing the opposite I usually do. Usually, like if I'm using a dark color like this, light's coming from and I'm doing them quick, light's coming from the left, so I'll use that dark corner from the right. So as it's stroking over to the left, you get a lighter feel to the tree here. So it touches heavy up onto the one side. That's a nice crooked tree there. I'd just take that off. Yeah, there we go. Through that, right here. There we go. Get some of those different trees back through there. And you can spend a long time doing a lot of these perfect trees, and I'll spend some time on it here as I'm closing out. I'll spend some time working some of these trees, and I like to undulate the ground, so I'll paint some of this down into the ground. Now here we have like a little edge, side edge here, coming up, and I'm going to add just a few little ones right here. There we go. Just push that back, but the a little over here too. So I'll push that edge. I want to get that edge there, so I'll go back. I'll just do it right now. A little light, and leave this drug edge like this. Just boom, like that. And that will leave that little edge that goes down over the cliff edge there. But back in through here, like in the photo, you see it dropping down. Some different trees and stuff like that, so you can undulate them any way that you want. As I do it in the final photo here, in the final that they have, those of you that are members, I'll put final photos of everything up, along with the drawing and everything in the group. But I want to paint a larger one here, so I'll get the idea. And it's going to come forward a bit. So mostly out through here, I'll get it pretty solid out onto the outside edge here. And then a few little sky holes as it goes up to the top up there. Right up there. Here we go, like that. And so I want a big one out here. As I come out to this side here, I will just push and twist the brush to get some different things, and they get longer. And really in the old trees, they start to bend down a little bit as they get out towards here too as well. So they start to bend down. Now, do you put any light on this? That's going to be up to you here. If you want to put some lights, leave those sky holes. You could come back like I've done before, which looks really nice is to take your knife and some burnt sienna and push that through and light and scratch. So I scratch through just a bit and then take a little bit of it out. And see, I love those scratch marks. And so, while the paint is still a little wet, you can come through and add a little burnt sienna. That was a little too much burnt sienna. And add little scratch marks through the trees here. And, those of you that have painted with me, yeah, I do have it. Painted the Dutch with me, we use this, right? This is I spent a lot of time talking about this. This is the thigh bone of a cow, and that's what the Dutch used to scratch through their paintings when they added detail veining and stuff like that to flowers and stuff. They would just scratch through, and you can do the same thing even with this. It just so if the paint's even slightly dry, you can just scratch through the painting, and it works really well. I've had this for years. I've had this little tool, and that works pretty good. But you want to kind of undulate it, fill some up back in here, fill them up a little bit more, like there's a little more trees going on in some areas here. You're looking through some others, a little heavier, some little light like that right down through that journey, which is what I want. And then we thin it out. We're going to thin it out here. Maybe a little more blue, maybe a bit of white. That makes it more atmospheric as you come back here. So you want the trees actually heading a little smaller and heading towards the color of the sky as you add them back here. Little bits, and you can add little bits of those around. Blur them out slightly so you don't have too much detail in them as they start to go away. Now, on the photo reference and stuff I have here, I have a lot of greens. There's a lot of green going back up through there. And you can add that. You have your pine green, and you have your pine green and your yellows, and you can add that if that's what you want to add back in through there. A little bit of the green is nice, but I don't want it to take over. I love these warms and this wintry kind of feel for it, so I don't want to lose that. But I will create a few little undulations here and some ideas of some trees. This is how I do them here. Soften some of these out. If it gets too heavy, go over it with your grays. Go over it with your gray colors, but leave a little bit of that. That right in there is a little bit too edgy. So I can take a little bit of water, even though that was from yesterday, and just remove it lightly, see? Because the colors will stay soft for a little bit. This is a little harder, but I can just rub a bit, soften those edges. I want these edges have to be softer back through there. So you can do that with some of your movements. But this is what I'll do here and create some of these greens, browns, burnt siennas, different colors. Maybe a few little ones here, just ideas here. Right through there, right up against the... You see some up against the edges of the water back there. I'm going to leave that water, just a suggestion there, I think. But a few little trees along the edges there. Little horizontals, little verticals. Simple, simple, simple. There. And that creates that depth, see? And so... Really, guys, back in through here, don't get carried away. Don't make perfect trees. Make impressions of it. Because every time you make a tree back here, you're taking the interest away from the foreground, the cowboy and the cows and stuff like that. So we want to be careful how much we do. A little bit back up along this ridge line here, up along this little valley. There, and like I say, you can soften anything out with your snow color or the light violet that we used in there, right? You could just soften some of that out. Let some of that go right up there, right up along that edge, back up in there. And that works. Any more details or anything like that you want to add, you could go ahead and add that in as well. You know, and you see you have lots of other videos from me. You know, you might, you know, those of you that love to paint rocks, a couple rocks right up here might look really nice. Of course, I'll finish up all of this stuff and I'll put the final photo in for you guys to take a look. And I thank you very much for painting with me, you know, for the last yesterday and today. We got it done. But and if you like this video, you want to see more of them, make sure that you subscribe and make sure that you click a like on that. Leave a comment, because we schedule our videos by who's commenting and what they're putting on, what you guys want to see. You want to see more flowers, you want to see more animal portraits, you want to see, comment, and then we try to answer those and get those videos up, because we paint a whole bunch of different things here. Okay? Got just a couple minutes left. So thank you very much, and don't forget to you know, leave that comment. And those of you that want to learn more about the JansenArt system, the acrylics we paint with, all these different techniques, we do have the JansenArt Academies. That's where all my online classes are. You know, we have over 700 videos here. We have another 1,000 videos over in online classes and everything that takes it even a little bit more in depth. Some of the old Dutch and all that kind of stuff. So you can go look up the JansenArt Academies. We'll put a link into the video here for that, for any one of you that want to come on over. It's free to join, but to take an online class, it's not. But we have all kinds of other videos over there as well. So join us over there in the conversation. I'm there every day in the morning doing a little teaching, talking to everybody. You can post photos, and we all have a good time over there, okay? All right. So I'll look forward to seeing you some guys, and look for the final of this. Thanks very much for painting with me, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.